Hey everybody, good morning. We're taking a look today at 2 Samuel, chapter number 19, and we see that David mourns for Absalom. We see, this chapter has a lot in it. We see David returns to Jerusalem. We see David in Shammai again. We see them meeting again. We see David and Mephibosheth meeting. And we see David's kindness to some other people and stuff like that. But what I want to look at here is looking at David's mercy to Shimei. Now, if you remember who he is, you got to go back. If we go back a couple chapters to 2 Samuel 16, and we see that as David was fleeing, Shimei was a man of Saul's family who threw stones at him, who cursed at him, spit on him, if I remember correctly, called him a bloodthirsty man. He actually says, "So now you are caught in your own evil because you are a bloodthirsty man." And if you remember, our actually devotion that day on the 16th was about all of this here, about all of that there. But what I see here in these verses, we're looking at the middle of 18 down to verse 23. Okay, we see that Shammai comes to David for mercy, and he says, "For in verse 24, I, your servant, know that I have sinned." You see what happens, when we sin and we come to God. This is a picture of Christ. David is a picture of Christ here. And when we come to God, this is how God wants us to be. He wants us to humble ourselves before Him and come to Him and say, "Lord, I've done against you. I've done against your people. I've done against myself. I've done against your word. Will you forgive me?" But notice what happens here in verse 21. It's the same thing that happens at the end of verse 10 back in chapter 16. You have Abishai acting as the accuser, as the devil does. But look what he did, but look what he did. And look at what he says. In verse 21, he says, But Abishai, the son of Zeruiah, answered and said, Shall not Shammai be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed? So here is another picture, just really just helping us clarify what is going on in the spiritual realm is, as we are coming to humbly before God, the devil is there saying, but look, but look what he did, but, and this is what happens. And then we see in verse 22 and 23, we see David acting as a type of Christ, and he shows him mercy. He shows him, he says, "What have I to do with you?" He says, "For don't you know that I'm king over Israel?" Therefore the king said to Shammai, "You shall not die." And the king swore to him. Now David had every right, the first time, to kill him, and he didn't. He knew that this was God telling him, all of this is coming on you because of what you have done. And it was prophesied even before that, that this was going to come on him by the prophet Nathan. If you remember, we talked about that. That here was God just confirming through Shammai, this is coming upon you because of that. And David showed him mercy, just as God does us, just as Jesus does us. If you look here, actually in chapter 18, verse number 33, at the end of it, it says, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died in your place." Well, Jesus did die in our place for those sins. He did die for those things that we miss and our shortcomings. If you would put your trust in Him, the devil's going to accuse you even more. The devil's going to try and tell you how bad of a person you are. Don't listen to that. Listen to the God and the Jesus that died for you. Listen to who He says you are. So have a super day, guys. I love you all.